Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of you and peace out to the rest of you. Hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. I'll tell you this straight away. This one is inspired by something that Passport OG told us in his upload about honor being one of the best policies for black men abroad. That is generally true. I'll go more in depth, but not for free. However, I'm going to state this for free for everybody. When you go and you live somewhere else, or you're going to spend enough time somewhere else, you got to watch yourself, because a lot of people have had experiences with the obnoxious, arrogant American. And I don't want to see black men being that way. We're American, but we ain't got to be obnoxious and arrogant. And a lot of times we're not. Sometimes people expect this from whites, and so there's no disappointment when they find it. And then they see this from us and they're disappointed. There are actually people around the world that, contrary to what Amr Metwali says, do like black folk and consider us to be better behaved than whites. And then they come across the worst of us, the most ignorant of us, and they lose it. I want this to not be the case, of course. There are ways to get your point across when you go somewhere and things just don't work, but you need them to work. That is very true. Living in another system can lead to major headaches. It can lead to problems, and you could not have avoided them, and you can't get out of them when you're in them. It can lead to that. That's true. When you come to this country here, to Saudi Arabia, and you're new, you don't want to start driving early on. Now, if you want to get your driver's license early, fine, but you don't want to start driving early on, especially outside of the cities. You get into these Bedouin villages and they don't know how to drive. The traffic may not be too big a problem, but they don't effing know how. They don't care how. And if a Saudi hits you, you're at fault. Not because the law says so, but because the regular run-of-the-mill people that are responsible for administering it are not going to be honest. Police in general will be honest here, but they'll be lied to by witnesses and insurance report guys. It's happened before. And it has happened. They'll do this to Arabs that are not from the Gulf. So they damn sure do it to foreigners when you get into these Bedouin towns where they're the nicest and their hospitality is the best. They will still do this. A teenager joyriding in his dad's car could run a red light, bust you up, knock your bumper off. And then later on, you're made to feel like you're lucky because the father of the teenager is telling you and the cops, I forgive him, like you did something wrong, and it was his son. I know because it happened to a Jordanian guy. Nope, he wasn't dark-skinned. He was a real light-skinned Jordanian, but it happened to him because he's not Saudi and he's not from the Gulf. He's a true ajnabi, meaning foreigner. That's how it worked. Things get better. They're getting better here. But I want you to know that there will be situations where you could not have really avoided a particular outcome, and then you can't make it right afterwards. And there's really nothing you can do. And you will be tempted to say, you know what? Americans are better than you in this regard, and you will be right. Now, there is a way to get around that. But what I want you to do in this case is to understand what may very well happen. And I want you to know what you don't want to do. You don't want to come off as arrogant. You can even be rightfully upset because you've been given mixed messages and you've been confused. And if you are, make sure you got someone that can translate exactly what you're going to say. And remember, you represent black people, whether you like that or not. And there are people that actually do look up to us. And there are people that don't like us because we're black. It goes both ways. But see, you may not know about those who actually look up to us and like us more. Oh, that's happened. It happened to me when I got here. A particular tribe in the city in which I was living became friends with me. They even gave me permission to use their last name. the white Canadian that came a day ahead of me into the country and moved up to that town with me, well, was not as well received. Was he their friend? Did they like him too? Yes, but they took me in like a relative. And I remember it was during Ramadan that he ticked them off and ticked me off. And they asked me what he said, and I translated, and I told them, man, I'm sorry. I mean, I saw the side of him before, but I didn't think he would show this to you. I didn't think he would say this to you. I thought he would just, say this stuff to me, and I'd avoid him or fire back or something. They began to compare and contrast us, and I became even closer to them in their minds than he was. They preferred the black American, not because I'm light skinned. The Canadian was lighter than me. They could tell I wasn't white and that he was white. They even make jokes about his complexion. I had to stop them from that. I had to cut that and nip that in the bud. And the guy that made jokes about his complexion was also lighter skinned. I was like, say, bro, stop calling him red, because they use red to mean white and super pale. I had to say to them, hey, man, stop making fun of his color like that, bro. You ain't that far removed. That does happen at times, but we don't know about that. We don't hear about it. We're not used to that. We think it can't be true, and it is. There are times when we're the ones that are preferred. It does happen that way. I want you guys to know, though, that I was shocked by that news that an African American got shot by somebody from the Philippines, and it was a Cebu rapper that shot him. I can theorize as to how that went down. Most of us are not getting shot there because we're not going there starting fights. I can also tell you, though, that the Malcolm X standard of reform, when it comes to both academics and culture, is our standard. I have seen, even on the Passport Bros app, that some are on their writing and they don't punctuate, they don't capitalize, they write in Niglish. They don't mean any harm, but they are nigliterate. We don't need that. They don't mean to go abroad and cause any trouble, but if that was their attitude towards education when they were growing up, they have to make up for that now in adulthood and catch up even academically. I don't mean they got to get a degree they can't afford. I don't mean that. I just mean that they got to teach themselves, because look, it didn't matter that Malcolm didn't go to a university. He taught himself. At the very least, he became articulate in English, his first language. That's the very least. Eloquent in English. If he misspelled later on, it was a typo. We now are in danger from guys that really are passport Pookies. And every time they do something dumb, these guys are going to be referred to as passport bros. I'm not a passport bro, but I don't want to see passport bros who actually do have some standards and a code be wrongly associated with all of the negativity. I don't want to see that. Ahmed Metwali is already doing that. An Arab guy from Egypt, no doubt. The ghettoest of Arabic-speaking countries. The least trusted of all Arab nationalities. And also known to be the most arrogant. I mean, they're super proud of what? People pretty much say that the Egyptians and the Gulf Arabs are the worst. I'm going to tell you now, Gulf Arabs don't quite have that arrogance. Now, they're lazy, but they don't quite have that arrogance. Egyptians are not lazy, but they got arrogance, and they're willing to cheat and scam you. And there are many Egyptians that are honest, and they have to suffer because of the bad reputation of the other Egyptians. I myself don't socialize with Egyptians. I know they're good ones, but I don't know which ones are. I had to stop that. But then again, I also stopped socializing with Bedouins too. I don't socialize with them either. They inevitably say something that shows me that they're ignorantly racist, and Egyptians, well, they're actively racist. That's why Ahmed Metwali uses the N word with a hard R and tells black passport bros that nobody likes black men. And even said, he even verbally makes the distinction between passport Pookies and passport bros. But he doesn't fully make one. He doesn't really look into passport bros. He just sits up and says, well, location doesn't matter. If you can't get women in America, you can't get them elsewhere except by paying and exploiting the dollar. Well, that pretty much means that all women are for sale. So why, if they're all for sale, then you can't say anything because men went where they could afford the women, since they're all for sale, according to you. Because when men in the West can't get these women, it's because of the money we don't have. But when we get the money, that doesn't make it any easier. So since we know that, why not go somewhere where you actually have a shot at really bonding? And if it's not a true emotional bond, at the very least, you have a shot at a woman that honors her commitment so that you can honor yours. What's wrong with that, Ahmed Metwali? Oh, that's right. Because you're from Egypt, you see all women as being like Egyptian women because you lived in Egypt and you lived in America. And then you lived in Colombia. But we do have passport Pookies abounding. That is true. And we're going to have to explain to some of these guys. I mean, when we notice somebody wants to go the path of a passport, we should be willing to do two things that can change the perception and protect the reputation. Number one, as I've stated before, we must be willing. Now, there are other things that I'm going to tell you only for pay. But the first thing we must understand is that we need to cooperate with local men to counter feminism and misandry, because the local women are being indoctrinated by Western niches that follow us to these places with feminism and misandry. They're being indoctrinated with that mess. Rome has experienced this of Average Man Unplugged. He experienced this and uploaded about it. I want y'all to keep that in mind. This is not a joke. This is real. They're not playing around. They're trying to spread this, and we're not really working with local men to help them avoid this. And you don't go to the local men and say, look, man, y'all need to know how to put the smack down on these women. Y'all don't know how to control them. No, don't do that, because we come from a country where the men lost control over our own lives to the women. Forget controlling the women. We lost control of our own lives to them. They'll know that. What we can do is we can say, listen, we know what the Western niches are going to export, and they're going to do it electronically. We know what they're trying to tell your women behind your back, and we can tell you how to avoid it, because once it's firmly rooted, it's over. Now, if we would present it as that because that's really the truth, they would better receive that because it is true and it's more recognizable as true. The second thing we would need to do, though, is that when we find out that a young man wants to go the path of the passport, or a path of the passport bro, SYSBM or IBMOR, either you were on that and you introduce them to that path with its tenets and its codes. Notice I did not say tenants. That's a renter of your property, but tenants. Some of us are still nigliterate. Stop it. If you're nigliterate, you need to go back and fix some of these things before you claim any of these paths. And understand, if you're nigliterate in English and you're using Google Translate to talk to someone in another country, you're going to type in English incorrectly and the translation won't make sense. And as Many people around the world get used to using Google Translate more. They become aware of how educated you are in your own first language by how much sense what you said makes in their language's translation. No more English. Anyway, when you find out a young man wants to get on one of these paths of the passport, you introduce them either to someone that can get them on that path with the right code and tenets, or you are that person. But you help them to not become a passport Pookie. You help them to not become a justification for what Amr Metwali is saying. These are two things we'll need to do. Now, how to navigate sticky situations where you're just plain flat out right and the locals are wrong about something, or a local government office is wrong and you're right. I'll talk to you about that. That's going to be on Buy Me a Coffee or the Passport Bros app. It ain't free. Not doing that. And I think what I'll do is I'll make it not only for subscribers per se, but for any supporter. So you can donate any amount on the Passport Bros app and hear it, or you could go to Buy Me a Coffee and donate any complete dollar amount. And then you could hear it. But what you can't do is get it free. And you don't have to do the full-on subscription 10 a month to either of them either. I think I'll make it like that. And I'll let y'all know as soon as I do. I've already uploaded a general overview of teaching over here. That's a general one. This will be one of the more specific ones. But you see, generally speaking, passport bros that are actually passport bros understand that you got to have manners, your best manners when you go anywhere. They understand that. But especially when you go into someone else's place where you're a guest. That's true. They understand that. SYSBM understands that. IBMOR understands that. Passport Pookies are too savage, too Tarzan chaserish to understand that. They don't do nuance. They don't do real education. They do pseudo knowledge, pseudo intellect, pseudo wisdom. They believe that they can speak things into existence, and the power of the power of melatonin, because they don't know the difference between that and melanin. Because, Niglish, nig intellect. Because they believe that's what it is. And you can tell because they write and they don't punctuate, probably don't capitalize either, and they misspell a lot. There is that. And I think it's a growing element. And the fact is that maybe the DR is lost to the passport Pookies. Maybe that's the case. Okay. Too bad, so sad. Maybe it is the case that certain cities in the DR are lost to them. Too bad, so sad. What can you do? It's too late now once the place is lost. But then again, those places were within easy reach of the passport Pookies. Let somebody that's going to wind up going live and begging for $100 Cash App just to catch a flight to get back into the States only be able to get to places like that. Let them do that. Let them be able to reach there. But if somebody wants to go one of the paths of the passport, put them in touch with someone, if it's not you, that can help them be on that path and not a passport Pookie thinking that he's one of these things. And you know what? We need to get some blockchain technology going. Blockchain technology is what they use for the digital currencies, as you know. And that's the technology that allows the transactions to actually be recorded and not allow people to just hack and key in an amount of money they don't have. That's blockchain. Blockchain technology is going to be a means by which we will be able to actually um, we'll be able to actually identify who is a true BMPT that is not a passport Pookie. With the endorsements of SYSBM, IBMOR, Passport Bro, maybe Passport Gang if there are enough of them and they want in on that. No passport Pookies. And this way, just like um, just like joining a fraternity, you got to go through some chapter to join. And then you could transfer chapters, but you don't just put on the jackets and start acting like you're a part of a particular frat, and then you say that you're a frat. You don't just twirl a cane wearing a suit and say that you a noop. You don't just start calling yourself ice cold and tell everybody you a Kappa well, tell them you an alpha and you not. Why did I say Kappa? And you not. You don't just start stomping and barking, talking about you a Q dog, you an Omega, and you not. You don't want to do that. If you did that, you get busted. They got ways of knowing who's actually a member and who's not. It is the same thing with this. We're going to need a blockchain technology with this. We can talk more about that later on, but I'm letting you know now, gentlemen. We're going to have to put, if we done already seen one African American man get shot in the Philippines. Understand, man, everybody else don't know about SYSBM and Passport Bro and Passport Pookie and all these distinctions. They don't know. So it's in our best interest to help those who want to go on a path of the passport to get on that particular path and not the Passport Pookie path. I understand Pookies always outnumber anyone else. They may not outnumber us abroad, but they outnumber everybody else. And they will act in ways that will cause the hyenocracy to sit back on their haunches and say, shoot, I ain't even got to call nobody no more. No, let them go and act like that. Girl, look, I know we said we wanted the passport bros to go. I know we said that, girl, but we ain't mean that because, look, they about something. They making them, look, passport Pookie, though, they really are dusty. They dusty for real, girl. No, don't say nothing. Don't call nobody. Let them go and show out. So that the passport bros can't go nowhere either because won't nobody take them. And then they stuck right over here with us. And we can just stay not watching our coochie and bringing them other men's kids. Now we can really get all up in their face and make their lives hell because them niggas tried to leave with our money, our weave money, our child support money for somebody else's kids, with our nails money. No, let the passport, they will sit back and not make phone calls, hoping that somebody goes and gets themselves into trouble so that the government will say, okay, this is not an individual we need to get rid of. We need to get rid of their demographic. They're hoping for that. Hyenas will sit up and look at a passport Pookie and say, we'll help you get, you know what, I'll pay for your passport application fee myself. Go on down there. Here's some money so you can buy you some trim. Don't use no birth control, though. And them Pookies will take it. But they will also go and act out and get themselves shot because they have no tact, they got no nuance, they got no manners. And they will try to help them to go not even to where they already have ruined things, but to go where they have not yet, like the DR. I mean, like Japan and PI, the Philippines, and Thailand. Places that were pretty difficult for them to reach. I hope that what I've said is a benefit, but I think I said enough. Thank you for listening. And as always, black heart, black mind, black out, assalamu alaikum, black heterosexual, non-select male power because they don't like it in black patriarchy until extinction of judgment day. Thank you for flying again with us here on Jet Black Airways, where Jet Black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us until the wings and the wheels fall off. Gender, justice, forever.